Hello. Please feel free to pause this video and watch it again in case you need to relearn some of the concepts. Today we're going to be talking about completing the square. When you're completing the square, what you're basically doing is it's another method for finding the x-intercepts. So you are finding the places on the graph where the parabola touches the x-axis. And it's just one other method. We've already talked about factoring, which does the same thing. It's just another method for finding where the parabola touches the x-axis. So when we're talking about completing the square, there are some steps for completing the square that you're going to want to follow. And as long as you have these notes with the steps on them in front of you, you should be able to do completing the square regardless. And it's fairly easy. Once you do a couple problems, it will not be so challenging. So pause the video so that you can write down the steps, and then we'll go through and do an example problem. So here's our example problem. And it says x squared plus 9x minus 136 equals 0. And from our steps over here, we know that we need to get it in the form x squared plus bx equals c. And right now, our c is with the bx, it's with the 9x. So we need to move it to the other side of the equation. And how would we move that negative 136 to the other side of the equation? By adding 136. So you now have x squared plus 9x equals 136, and you're getting ready to complete the square. So the next step on your notes says calculate b over 2. So b over 2. Well, our b value is the number in the middle attached to the x. In this case, it's 9x. We're going to take 9 and divide it in half, and you get 4.5. You're going to hang on to this number, 4.5, because we're going to use it again. The next step says square it and add this number to both sides of your equation. So we're going to take the 4.5 and we're going to square it. 4.5 squared is 20.25. And when you take this 20.25, the next step that you're going to do is you're going to add the 20.25 to both sides of your equation. So I'm going to take my equation, this one right here, and I'm going to add 20.25 to both sides. Okay? That's step 3. Now when we add this to both sides, x squared plus 9x plus 20.25, none of those are like terms. So we're just going to leave it as x squared plus 9x plus 20.25 equals. And then we can add 136 and 20.25. When you add those together, you get 156.25. Now, the reason why we do that, we square the b over 2 and add it to both sides of the equation, is because now you've created for yourself a perfect square trinomial. And that perfect square trinomial, you don't need to know really what it does other than the fact that it automatically factors always into the x plus b over 2 quantity squared. Well, we already figured out the b over 2. It's 4.5. So instead of b over 2, we can put in the 4.5 because that's our b over 2, and set it equal to 156.25. Then the next couple of steps are just solving for x. In order to solve for x, we're going to take the square root because that undoes the squared function. If I take the square root of one side, I have to take the square root of the other side. So the square root undoes the squared, so basically all I'm left with is x plus 4.5 equals, and then you're going to also want to take the square root of 156.25. And when I do that in my calculator, I get 12.5. Now the directions say also don't forget the plus or minus, so it's plus or minus 12.25. Now when you have plus or minus 12.25, that means you actually technically have two equations. You have x plus 4.5 equals positive 12.5, and x plus 4.5 equals negative 12.5. And then you just solve these like you would solve a regular equation. So you minus 4.5 from both sides. And you get x equals, well, 12.5 minus 4.5. You get 8. And then you minus 4.5 here. And you get x equals negative 17. So you've successfully found both of the x-intercepts in the problem. And that's it. So please feel free to watch the video again and understand how to do completing the square. Thank you.